Hello and welcome to the C&C Search Guide to the Secrets of Delivering the Very Best Version of You at Interview. Let me take a moment to introduce myself. So my name is Lucy Chamberlain and I am proud co-founder of the multi-award-winning support staff specialist consultancy C&C Search. And the two C's stand for Chamberlain and Chamberlain, which my brother and I. And we were founded 4 years ago and have grown exponentially in our marketplace, passionate about the legacy that we leave as a business, about making socially conscious decisions, and also, and most importantly, we are all about shining a very bright light on support staff across businesses in London. Now, over the last 21 years, I have worked tirelessly in this space and I have conducted over 11,000 interviews. And I wanted to share some of my tools and knowledge specifically to support all of the candidates that we so appreciate coming in and investing their time to meet with us at C&C Search. So this is for you. Now, where do we start? So, what's most important, as far as I'm concerned, in the interview process is this very beginning stage. I would encourage you to take a notepad and spend about an hour at least on this process. Now, an hour sounds like a long time, but when you think about all of the investment, emotional, financial, time-wise, that it takes to attend interviews, this investment is going to be really well placed. So these are the key questions to sit down and ask yourself, because until you truly know yourself, your values, and what you have to offer, it's really difficult to attend an interview from a place of real confidence. So take some time with these questions to really reflect on them. Now, number two, I really enjoy, because it's who do you want to channel in your interview? And that might be Beyonce, it might be Elon Musk, could be Richard Branson, it may even be Theresa May, if that's who you would like to channel. And what I mean by that is it's searching out the qualities in that person that you really admire. It might be their composure, their positive spin on life, their enthusiasm, their values or their passions. It could be anything, but it's a fantastic person to anchor to and to really know why you deeply connect with that person. You can draw on that resource then during an interview, which is invaluable. It's that classic question, what would Beyonce do? It's really helpful. Give it a try. Number three, what is your 90-second personal elevator speech? Now, this is your personal sell. It is so important that you truly understand how to represent yourself effectively. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but at this early stage, it's your opportunity to produce a 1.5 minutes worth of pitch all about you. Now, sometimes people can feel a little uncomfortable with this, but without it, you will never secure the job of your dreams. So it is worth drawing on the resources of friends, colleagues, ex-bosses, partners, family, and really asking them what they feel makes you unique, what they feel your core strengths and abilities are, and then reflect over your career at what your key achievements have been to date. Now, that can also be your key achievements in life too. For example, it may be that you've learned a new language. That shows dedication, determination, commitment, and the ability to see things through, all of which are really valuable to future employers. I would encourage you to record yourself, as in video yourself on your phone, delivering your personal elevator pitch. The reason is that you don't need to share it with anybody, but you can see how you're coming across. What does your body language look like? Are you succinct? Does your voice have energy and passion? It's really key that you have that within your pitch and that is really delivered. And your core personal values. Why is that important? Well, unless you figure out what's really important to you, it's very difficult to marry those with the values of a business that you're joining. And actually, it's those core values of a company married with your core values that will make for a much better career match, one that will last longer, be happier, more fulfilling, and where you will be able to feel that you can really inject the energy that you need into that role to get the very best out of it. So I would really encourage you to figure out what you value most. It could be family, it could be money, it could be all sorts of different values, but by knowing them, you can match them to the values of a business to best effect. Knowing also what genuinely makes you happy is really, really important. Knowing that whether it's being able to be lively, whether it's being able to be outdoors, whether it's having the opportunity to spend lots of time with family, so perhaps work flexibly, again, will help you match your career effectively. Really spending some time on working out what you've achieved so far, no matter how small, and what that might mean for a future employer is also critical. It's brilliant for building self-esteem, for reflecting and helping evoke an attitude of gratitude for where you've got to so far in your career, but also will be invaluable in terms of producing the examples and questions that you will have in the future. Further to the pre-interview phase, so you have spent some fabulous time really getting to know who you are. And then it's all about the 3 Ps: personalization, personality, and preparation. So whether you are sending a CV, a cover letter, or of course, spending time with ourselves at C&C Search, personalize and put your personality into whichever aspect of that process you are going through. Don't send out generic cover letters. Don't spend time in an agency and not share everything that makes you you. It's really important to give the best possible platform to separate yourself from the rest. And then, of course, there's the preparation. So this is step 2 in a critical process. So you now know who you are, what your values are, and what you have to bring. You've secured an interview, but you are yet to attend the interview. And here is my preparation for you. So number 1 is a little around your personal development. Now, I've cited 2 incredible females here, Amy Cuddy and Celeste Headley. They have 2 incredible TED Talks that are on the TED Talk website. Just Google TED Talks and you will find Amy Cuddy and Celeste Headley. They both last around 10 minutes long. Amy Cuddy will help you with your preparation in terms of physical preparation. So how you bring down all those stress nerves, all that cortisol in your system that makes you feel anxious, and how you can really ground that, how you can really feel powerful and in the best possible place to go and deliver that best version of you. You can also listen to Celeste Headley, The Power of How to Have Effective Conversations. It is a brilliant TED Talk, absolutely fantastic, and will be really helpful at allowing you to come across as having strong emotional intelligence during your interview process. Now, I want to know everything there is to know about a business before I go and meet with them when we're working with them. It's got to be no different when you're interviewing. So check out the website, look at their values, know exactly how they present themselves. I want to look at Glassdoor. Now, there is one note of caution with Glassdoor, is that often, and as human beings, we tend to focus on negative rather than positive, and far more people are like to write a negative review than a positive review. But the thing I love about Glassdoor is it does give an insight into culture. And so often when you go onto Glassdoor and find a company, particularly one of the more high profile ones, it will give you an insight into the questions they ask at interview. Doesn't get much better than that. I want to look at LinkedIn. not just at their company page, but I want to look at the people that work in that firm. Where did they come from? What sort of sense and feel do I get about the culture of that business from looking at their profiles? Then the social side. What's going on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, etc.? What sort of charitable links do they have and how do they give back? YouTube is an invaluable insight into getting a first-hand sense of the people that work at a firm. And most people will often have personal pages too. So that's when I research the interviewer themselves. The more knowledge I have, obviously, in terms of for candidates, the more knowledge you have in the person that's going to be sat in front of you asking the questions, the more confident, comfortable, capable you're going to feel. Not just that, it gives you fantastic opportunity to create those wonderful bridges between yourself and the interviewer. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, last week we had a candidate that went out to interview that had followed all the steps of preparation that I so encourage. And she found out that the interviewer was undertaking a personal blog on food. And so they were able to talk about that. It demonstrated the depth of research and the professionalism from the candidate's standpoint, but also allowed them to connect on a more personal level, which inevitably is going to position them in a greater place than somebody that hasn't done that research. I say again, video you. I say this all the way through your preparation. So video yourself talking about why you would want to join that firm, what you've got to bring for that role, and what you've got to bring to the company. You can see again where your improvements are needed, where perhaps you need to smile a little more or a little less. Perhaps you're just gesticulating too much with your hands or fiddling. It gives you a great chance to see how you are perceived. And to re-record and re-record until you feel super confident that you are delivering the best version of yourself. Now, there are all sorts of types of interview. Now, we don't have time to go through every single one of these today because there's just simply, these are all training sessions in themselves. But just to briefly cover this, there are structured interviews. That means there are set questions. Unstructured interviews, that's a chat. Stress-based interviews, so that's to place you under pressure and see how you succeed. Definitely everyone's least favorite there. Behavioral interviews. Now, these are the gold standard of interviews. These are from millennials of research or millennia of research, these are the interviews that are considered to be the very best in terms of securing the right person for the role. And they should be embraced by both parties. We're going to talk a little more about how you prepare for them. And the behavioral interview theory is that demonstration of past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. I guess it's a bit like leopards not changing their spots. A case interview and a panel interview where there are multiple interviewers. Now, the reason I've listed these is that I would actively encourage you to ask your consultant which of the interviews you can expect so that you can dive deeply into what each of these mean and make sure that you are best prepared. Questions for the interviewer. For most interviewers, this is one of the absolute benchmarks of pass and fail in terms of moving forward to the second round or securing the role that you would like. I've noted down some of the interview questions that I think work really well, but there are so many online. The critical thing to mention here is it doesn't matter how many times you've returned to a business for interviews, or if you are seeing multiple people on one day, you need to ask each and every person questions. So the reason why I love questions like, why did you join the company? Is because you can ask that to multiple people and it has validity. So it doesn't matter that you repeat a question to different parties. It's important that you ask questions. So make sure you have those interview questions prepared and ready to go. The follow-up. Now, what's really important in an interview is that there is a close and a follow-up. it's something that so many people neglect. So the two things I would mention are, one, when you finish an interview and perhaps it's not the right role for you, still make sure that you thank the individual very much indeed for their time, that you look forward to hearing from them. Why? Well, we work in a small world, a transparent world, and you just do not know who you are going to meet again in another company, or who may suddenly reappear as the hiring manager in a business that you passionately want to work for. Remember that. You also want to make sure that when you're leaving an interview, that you are grateful to the receptionist for taking care of you. Make sure that you thank them when you're leaving. Warm smiles and be polite. You would be amazed at just how many of our clients will check in with the receptionist, or the receptionist will mention how great you were, or how personable or friendly or impressive. So be aware that the receptionist holds a very powerful position in any business in terms of influencing more senior members of staff. If it is a role that you are interested in, then make sure you express that. You can say in your closing, this is a role and company I am really passionate about joining or securing, and I wanted to thank you so much for your time. I really hope to hear from you soon. Or you can ask, what would the next steps be? And very powerful, do you have any concerns about my suitability for either the role or the company? It's important to remember throughout your interview, ultimately, what the client is looking at is the job suitability and the cultural suitability. So how your skills, experience, and background will best fit the role that they're recruiting for, but also how your values, your past behaviors, your attitude will best fit their culture. Look at, if you are to secure the role, any questions that you might have. So perhaps if it's looking very positive and you might have a job offer, make sure that your consultant is has full transparency on any questions that may arise, any details around the package that you would require to accept, and whether there's any holidays coming up or anything that may impact any other processes in place. This enables your consultant to do the best possible job for you. Now, whether you receive an offer or not, you need that feedback. There are always times when there's not enough hours in the day, and perhaps your consultant hasn't come back to you immediately, or they're off or on holiday. Send that note through, I need my feedback, because the only way you can improve and develop your interview skills is to receive feedback, whether it's constructive feedback for the future in terms of improvement, or whether it's just fantastic feedback and a confirmation that you're doing all the right things. We will always have times when we walk into a room and there is a challenging interviewer that is facing you. So it's wonderful to prepare for that. So I would encourage any candidate interviewing through ourselves to make sure that they have prepped not just for an interviewer that's going to be collaborative, positive, easy to interview with, but for somebody that may have a more challenging interview style. Maybe they're very serious in the interview. Perhaps they are a little distracted. Maybe they're not as engaged as you would need them to be. And often that can induce feelings of anxiety or stress. So it's great to know that you have a toolbox to draw upon when that stress is going on. So my advice in these situations, and again, it's to really prep for this scenario and think through the tools that you have at your disposal when you're feeling anxious or stressed. I mean, this works for pretty much any situation, but in an interview, it's perfect, and all of which are perfectly acceptable. So taking a deep belly breath right from the bottom of your belly, slow, will help ground you when you first enter and sit down for interview. It brings all those stress hormones down. It enables you to center yourself. Take a conscious moment just to feel your bum in the chair and your feet on the ground. Again, it's very centering. and it allows you to be present and focus on where you are at that time. Smile, and make sure that you know that it's okay to share a little vulnerability. Now, what I mean by that is, if you're asked a question and perhaps in that moment you've had a spike of the fight or flight mode, which is your anxiety, it's okay to say, let me think about that for a moment. Or, do you mean this by your question? Or could you rephrase that question? And you can even ask, if you know that potentially your answer wasn't as comprehensive as you felt it might need to be, does my answer cover the issues you were asking about? Make sure you always know that you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And I think, for me, the most important aspect of managing that stress, apart from breathing slow and calm, recentering ourselves by feeling a chair and the ground underneath our feet, is prep. The preparation will take away 90% of the anxiety and allow you to shine. Now, of course, I have mentioned sweating. I know it's not very glamorous, but some people, anxiety, that's how it manifests. And so just make sure you're dressed comfortably and that you're able, again, just to keep conscious breath work going. So to keep breathing slow and deep and taking pauses. Taking a moment to compose yourself mid-interview is okay. And sometimes just taking a sip of water can allow you to do that. Behavior-based interview questions. So we're going to talk about the ideal way of answering these. Now, I want you to refer to these core behavioral interview question subject matters. If you are able to produce, rehearse, practice, and deliver examples of your work in these core areas, you can't go wrong in any interview. So I would take the time to write out your example, and I'm going to go through the correct structure of this example, of the answer, sorry. But I would take your time out to answer each and every one of these in depth. So it's the STAR response. So this is responding for maximum impact. Describing the situation and experience and your involvement. Outlining the challenge you faced and what the ideal outcome was. Then the actions that you took in response of the challenge and the result of those actions. What was the business impact? And if you, basically, I encourage all our candidates to write out the STAR response for each and every one of those subject areas, to advise them, to learn them. Again, I'm going to tell you to video yourself recording them. These sorts of parts of your preparation for interviews will enable you to secure any role. Be authentic and be you. Now, authenticity is a word that's used a lot now, and it's actually one of our core values. But what it means for me, and what it should mean to you in an interview situation too, is that you are you, that you're not false or copied, and that you are genuine and real. That all of your answers have origins supported by unquestionable evidence that is authenticated and verified, where you're representing your true nature and beliefs, true to yourself, and that you know that you are delivering your examples of your experience that are both reliable and trustworthy. So don't be afraid to show yourself, but professionally. So maintain professional speech no matter how relaxed your interviewer is. Don't go into anything that personally you wouldn't feel appropriate to share with a stranger on the street, because essentially the interviewer is a stranger. And don't go into too much detail talking about yourself. Around a minute or so is fine. Keep in mind that 90-second elevator pitch. And when you discuss personal topics, relate them to skills that are relevant to the position that you're interviewing for. So, for example, it may be that you are discussing, I don't know, the fact that you represented your county at netball when you were younger. Well, that shows determination, hard work, tenacity, dedication, the ability to effectively work as a team member, and so on and so forth. So keep in mind that this is somebody you don't know, and that maintaining professionalism and positivity is critical to securing the next stage of any interview process. Practice, practice, and practice. Rehearse these interview questions, and it's going to help you relax. Some of the other key questions that you will be asked, even if they're not necessarily considered to be the gold standard of interview questions, so start practicing them regardless, is tell me about yourself. What are some of your strengths? What would you say is your greatest weakness? What do you like most about our company? So I'll cover the greatest weakness question because it's a challenging one, but I'll cover that in just a moment. But practicing non-verbal communication is just as important. So I've focused a lot on practicing your verbal communication. So that is the communication skills that you use verbally. So I've talked to you about recording yourself, and I've talked to you about preparing your answers. But it's just as important to practice good non-verbal communication skills. Standing straight, making eye contact, and the firm handshake. Please practice your handshake. There is nothing worse than a weak handshake. And actually, a firm handshake automatically places you in a strong, confident position at interview. A firm handshake is psychologically linked with trust, with somebody with competence and gravitas. And that first non-verbal impression is a great beginning or a super quick ending. So make sure you're listening during that interview. Not that you're waiting to see what you're going to say next, but you're truly listening. That interviewer is going to give you great information directly or indirectly. And you're going to get lots of cues for what they're looking for in that communication. Great communicators listen, but also let the person know that you've heard what was said. Matching that style and pace of the interviewer and letting them know that you have really taken the time to pick up on bits of information as you've gone through the interviewer. Don't talk too much. Make sure you take pauses. So the interviewer has the opportunity to ask you a question about your answer, or indeed has the opportunity to move on. Never talk over an interviewer. That's a fatal mistake. And don't be too familiar. We've talked about that. Make sure you keep it professional. So, in summary of this area, use the appropriate language. Have an attitude of gratitude. So this person is investing their time in spending their time meeting with you. Make sure that you come across as positive, and even the more challenging aspects of your personal or business or educational experience should be given a positive spin. People want to work with positive, solution-driven people. They don't want to work with people that are going to, well, we call them mood hoovers, which is to suck the positivity out of the air. Take care to answer the questions, and that's the listening piece. Make sure that you are using brilliant examples of past behavior to back up your answers. And we've gone through those key ones you should make sure you prepare. So your strengths and your weaknesses. Now, you need to ensure you spend some time analysing, asking questions, people you've worked with, people you've had friendships with, relationships with, so on and so forth. Find out what makes you you. Practice speaking about them. Again, it's back to that personal elevator pitch. Now, in terms of the greatest weakness, I go with something much more authentic than I'm a perfectionist or I can't say no. Those two, every single interviewer has heard millions of times. I try and look at a real example in my past. And what I would say to you is to find perhaps an area where you didn't perform quite as well as you could have done. What the situation was, the task, the action, the results, that star response. But from that experience, what you've learned and how then, now, or more in the recent past, you have now changed your behavior to elicit a better result. That's where I would be most impressed with that response to that question. And it's okay to prepare that in full. And of course, your chance to sell yourself is when you're asked, tell me about yourself or your strengths or why they should hire you. It's also a chance to sell yourself when you're talking through the role you've had in previous companies. And what I mean by that is you can draw out those examples that allow you to shine. Exactly the same in your behavioral stories. So in those examples, that is the perfect moment to match your background and your experience and the fantastic impact you've had in your roles with the questions you're being asked. We Brits, if you are British, if you're listening to this, I'm sure that's prevalent too, not just in the Brits, but we're not brilliant at selling ourselves. And actually, it is proven that men are much more confident when it comes to talking about themselves and when it comes to talking about their skills and experience and allowing themselves to shine. Apparently, according to all the research, women are much more comfortable talking about being of service. So that means how they've supported, aided, been part of a team, etc. So it's time to get out of our comfort zone and get comfortable with talking about the brilliance that we have to offer. Now, ways to make one feel more comfortable with this is to quote somebody else. Look at your previous reviews, talk to your line managers, and bring in a quote about what somebody else has said about you if that makes you feel more comfortable. Change your mindset. You are simply representing what you can bring to a business. It's not about boasting. And stick with the facts. So talk about your achievements. Talk about things that can be backed up by evidence, again, if that makes you feel confident. Back to practicing that 90-second elevator pitch. Really important. In fact, critical. So I am happy to answer any questions that you may have around interviewing, interview process, preparation, as much as I possibly can. At C&C Search, we're absolutely here to be of service to every single one of our candidates. And whilst we may not be able to place every single one of you, we want to make sure that we have at least added value. And this is one of the ways in which we do that. You can follow us in all of our social media here. You're welcome to contact me directly anytime you'd like. And I really hope that this interview preparation has been useful. Have a great day.